Voters heading to the ballot box on Thursday for some local elections in some parts of England. We are going to be speaking to all the main political parties this week as campaigning enters its final stages.
It's a busy week,
Yes.
isn't it? And we're joined now on the programme by Labour's Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, who's in Westminster. Good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. It's a big test, isn't it, for you this week, the local elections. If you do badly, and the polls are suggesting you might do badly, what will that tell you and all of us about the way people think you're running the country for the last, 9-10 months?
Well, we only have local elections in some parts of the country this year, and many parts of the country that don't have local elections. There's obviously a lot of different issues. In Doncaster, for example, the big issue that Labour's campaigning for is for Doncaster Airport. Which is hugely important for that area. Lots of local issues, but also at the national level, what we're talking about is the plan for change that the government set out when we were elected last year. Clearly, we have inherited very damaging impact on the economy and on public services and communities across the country as a result of 14 years. But the plan for change, we're seeing already 3,000 more neighbourhood police coming onto our streets this year. Big drops in the NHS waiting times already month on month as a result of the work that's been done. There is a huge amount of work still to do, we know, and it's very unstable and difficult times across the global economy, but taking that step-by-step approach to start to repair the damage that we've inherited.
One of the big tests for you this week is the Runcorn and Helsby parliamentary by-election. Away from the local elections, this is a parliamentary seat. Nigel Farage was speaking to us from Reform a few moments ago, and he's sounding very confident that he can take that from you.
Well, time and again, what we hear from Reform, obviously, is just noise and rhetoric and protest without ever having proper plans in place and without ever having a serious plan as to how things will be done, as to how things will change.
OK, but if you look at the opinion polls, sorry to interrupt, but if you look at the opinion polls, more people are going to vote for his party than for yours. He's striking a chord, isn't he?
But I think in the end, if it's the choice between ramping up the rhetoric and actually getting things done, I think in the end, the most important thing for the country is the practical plans for change, the practical things that get things done right across the country. The reforms to the National Health Service we're talking about, the £22 billion investment, which frankly Reform and the Conservatives voted against. And we know that Nigel Farage has a history of talking about private insurance for the National Health Service. I think for people across the country, actually a National Health Service, that is the history that we have, the free funded National Health Service, that free at the point of use, that is really important to patients who are waiting for treatment across the country. And what the Labour government is doing is bringing those waiting times down. Again, it's practical change rather than just noise and rhetoric.
You've given some numbers there. Let me give you another number. The number of small boat crossings across the Channel so far this year has exceeded 10,000. That's up 40% on the same period last year. You're talking about delivering and showing results. That cannot be a result you are happy with.
Well, the boat crossings are high, and this is undermining border security and putting lives at risk.
And getting higher.
And we've obviously had 6 years in which the criminal gangs, smuggler gangs, have been able to take deep root. They are taking advantage, obviously, of the big increase in calm weather days that we've seen, but we cannot continue in a situation where the weather affects border security in this way, and that's why the action on the criminal smuggler gangs is so important. One of the things that's changed is that the criminal gangs have got this operational tactic now where they launch the boats further up the coast, and then people climb onto the boats, migrants climb onto the boats in shallow waters, knowing that the French rules for very many years have meant the French police could not and would not intervene as soon as they were actually in the water. So they've had no intervention there. We've now persuaded the French government to change their rules, to change their laws effectively, so that the French police can intervene with those boats and prevent people getting on them, and to prevent boats actually in French waters as well. Those changes are going to come in over the next few months. That is really important. There isn't a quick fix on this because of the way the gang operations have taken hold, but step by step we need to take action on that. And we're also taking action today to strengthen the asylum system to ensure that people who have committed sex offences, who are put onto the sex offenders register, will not be granted asylum in the UK, because we've had some shocking cases where that has happened, where they've been granted asylum, and I think that is wrong. And so we're changing the law on that as well.
The timing of that announcement today suggests that you are indeed worried about reform, doesn't it?
Well, the timing of the announcements we've made is because of the Border Security and Asylum Bill, which is going through Parliament at the moment. This particular measure is based on some work we've been doing some time, because, you know, we had that awful case last year of Abdullah Zedi, who had been granted asylum in 2020. He committed that terrible attack in Clapham of throwing the acid at a woman and 2 children. He'd been granted asylum in 2020, even though he'd been put on the sex offenders register for 10 years. I just think that is wrong. He should not have been granted asylum, and that's why we're changing the law, because it's just wrong to have these sorts of cases.
We just talk about some other things while you're with us. Obviously, Mark Carney has swept a victory in Canada overnight. We wouldn't have been expecting that only a few weeks ago, but it seems the secret of his success is that he stood up to Donald Trump. Is there a message for you there as a government in terms of standing up to Donald Trump in the future, especially when it comes to a possible trade deal with America?
Well, we obviously look forward to working with the new Canadian government. Canada is a huge, long-standing ally for the UK. We have immense cooperation, including on security, trade and many of those issues. And of course, Mark Carney is obviously a former governor of the Bank of England here in the UK, so is very well known to people in the UK. But we work very closely. We have a Five Eyes partnership, which includes the US, Canada, New Zealand and Australia and the UK, where we have intense security cooperation and intelligence cooperation across all of those 5 countries. That's why we work very closely with the US, we work very closely with Canada as well, and we will continue to do that. I think that is in the national interest. So our approach is to do what is right in the UK's national interest, not in any other country's national interest.
There's another announcement that's coming out this morning that the government is looking at extending the sugar tax onto sugary sweet coffee drinks that you might get pre-packaged in a supermarket or milkshakes. Your critics say that is another example of a nanny state approach.
Well, this is a policy that was actually introduced by the previous Conservative government very many years ago. It's a levy that's linked to the sugar in drinks and has had an impact. The evidence shows it's had an impact in terms of the health, particularly of children. So that's why the government's now consulting on going further on that, so that we're making sure that we're taking sensible, practical measures to improve the health of our children. I think a lot of us do worry about the health of our children.
Higher taxes.
Well, it's being consulted on at the moment, and this is a measure that has been introduced in the past. And I think, you know, when you can do something that can help the health of our children and make sure that we're doing things in the right way for young people's health, as well as supporting the economy more widely, I think that's a sensible thing to do. But the consultation's out at the moment, and then the Treasury will make the final decisions.
And another health story that a lot of our viewers have been getting in touch with this morning is this call for the rules to change on breast screening, on mammograms. Until now, and I think a lot of people didn't realise this, breast screening is only carried out by female radiographers, and there are calls to try to allow men to do it as well, so that waiting lists can be reduced. I just wonder what your thoughts might be on that.
So I'm afraid I don't know the details of that, and I would say I think that's obviously something, a matter for the health department, but I don't know the details either of the current arrangements that are in place or of any proposals.
But in principle, the idea of men carrying out those kind of screenings?
Well, we have long-standing rules in place for reasons, and I think that is a matter for the health department.
OK. Yvette Cooper, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.